going on, Sunbelt fans? My name is Dominic Rossetto, and welcome into the Week 13 preview of Sunbelt action. We've got quite a week to finish up the season with. We've got 4 teams battling for bowl eligibility. Only 3 of them can possibly make it, as 2 of them are battling each other directly for that. We'll get into who those 2 teams are. We've also got a West Division title up for grabs, last game of the week, and also the host of championship game. It's all coming down to the wire. It's going to be a pretty exciting weekend to end with. The only thing that we could probably hope for was that more of these were head-to-head. A little bit more of these matchups were head-to-head, but still, it's going to be great action to watch. We've got some really good matchups to finish up this regular season with. So let's get into it. The first matchup, one of the biggest, 12 Eastern on ESPNU. That pits Coastal Carolina going up against James Madison. Coastal has locked up the East Division and will represent that side of the conference in the championship game, regardless of who comes out of the West. Coastal's already set for that, but James Madison is going to want to have a say in that because even though they won't be listed as a champion anywhere, they're going to say that they won the tiebreaker if they win this game in the head-to-head. So it will be a pretty big build-up. The only downside to this is McCall's not going to be there, so you got not a full-powered Coastal Carolina going up against a James Madison team who seems to be maybe getting back on track after the loss to Louisville. They come back and end up beating Georgia State in what was a barn burner with how many times JMU ended up turning the ball over. But again, when you've let a team score that many points against you, does that get into your head at all? And how does that play into how they finish out the season? Because no matter what JMU does here, this is the last game of the year, whereas Coastal has more to play for. So honestly, I could see this game being one that makes sense to have JMU as the favorite because of that. So JMU right now, as I'm looking at it, is a 14-point favorite. A lot of that may have to do with their 4-1 record at home, although Coastal's 3-0 away from home. So I think it's still going to be a good game. I really do think it's going to come down to maybe possibly who has the ball at the end. I think Coastal's defense is weak in that secondary, and so JMU has a great passing attack with Centeio and Thornton for sure, and that tandem's going to do pretty well, but they also have a good running game to complement that passing game. So they're going to be able to hit Coastal everywhere and see if they can stop them at any specific point. I think they'll still be able to open up one side of that game no matter what. But I see them having a lot of success through the air on Saturday in that matchup. I am also favoring JMU. I am not taking them to cover. I think Coastal will still score points on JMU's defense. Not easy, but I also think this might be one of the better offenses that James Madison has seen all year, just with the playbook that Coastal runs. They mix it up. They've got some trick plays. They've got that kind of spread option, if you will, and now you've got a quarterback that they don't have as much film on, and a quarterback who can still throw the ball but is better with his feet. And so we'll see what James Madison can do against much of a more mobile quarterback maybe than what they've seen so far this season. So I am favoring JMU in that one. We're going to go with the final score of 31-24 Dukes to round it out. And then we'll get into how that could play going into championship weekend. The next matchup, 12 noon, ESPN Plus, Old Dominion versus South Alabama. I'm going to definitely favor South Alabama on this one. There's no reason for me to go the other way there. This one's going to be down there in Mobile, where South Alabama is a 4-1 home record against Old Dominion, who is only 1-4 away from home. So also with how Old Dominion's kind of finishing out this season, they're not putting enough points on the board, and they're certainly not going to put a bunch of points on the board against a really stout South Alabama defense. And one that's very important is the fact that South Alabama has a lot to play for. If they win and Troy loses, they will be West Division champs. And if Coastal loses, very possibly they would also host the game. So they have a whole lot to play for. There's no reason to think that South Alabama drops this one to Old Dominion. Not going to spend a ton of more time on that one. I think this one is rather easily in South Alabama's favor. So I'm going to go with USA 37. Old Dominion only coming away with 10 points in what will be their season finale. Again, another 12 noon kick, also on ESPN+. We've got Georgia State going up against Marshall there in Huntington, West Virginia. This matchup could be a little interesting. We know that Georgia State put up 40 last week against James Madison, which was very unexpected. I did actually pick Georgia State to actually upset JMU last week, and it was pretty close to happening, even though the scoreboard doesn't tell you the whole story, right, about how it happened. Still, they put up that many points, and when you put up that many points, you give your team a chance to win. However, Marshall also has a very stout defense, just like JMU. They are 3-2 at home, whereas Georgia State is only 2-3 on the road, though. Marshall's going into already having locked up a bowl game. Georgia State can't even make one. So it's hard. I mean, Georgia State's got nothing to lose. They can't possibly do anything to change postseason play, and Marshall, doesn't need this win for postseason play. So if these coaches play it a little safe on the Marshall side, Georgia State could easily take this game, but I still think Marshall is more talented overall. But I think Georgia State, again, after how they played last week, they're going to be disappointed with the final of that. They felt like they could have had that game, I think, and I think they keep this one real close. I am still favoring Marshall, though. I'm gonna favor Marshall 24-17 in this matchup, but another good one to check out because of how this could play out towards the end there. Granger being really successful on the ground with his legs. It'll be interesting to see how Marshall tries to defend that, as they hadn't seen a ton of that yet this year. 3:30 kick, Troy on this ESPNU on this one. Troy versus Arkansas State. This is kind of another one where you think not a ton to make anybody probably take a chance on Arkansas State, right? They are in the basement of the West, and they will stay in the basement of the West no matter how this plays out. Even if with a win, they do not own the tiebreaker, so they will continue to be at the bottom of the West no matter win, lose, or draw. Obviously can't draw. But win or lose, they will stay there. Troy will, just like South Alabama, be playing for a West Division title and the possibility of hosting the game as well. They have a ton to play for. They don't put a ton of points on the board, but we know their defense is, if not the best, one or two in the whole conference. So they are going to come out on fire. The only thing that plays into Arkansas State at all at this point is the fact that it is on the road, and Troy is only 3-2 away from home this year, which is kind of an interesting statistic. They've been great at home. They're 6-0 at home. So if this game was a home game, there would be even less doubt and more of a favor for Troy. But as it plays out right now, Arkansas State is obviously the home team. Troy's still favored by 13.5. I think that they're not going to struggle in this one, but maybe it's a little closer earlier than some people predict, but I think in the end, Troy puts this one away. I'm going to take Troy 27-10 in this one. Again, giving themselves a chance to likely take the West. If they win, they would take the West because they own the tiebreaker over South Alabama. So as long as they win, they will be the West representative. Coastal would be the East. Then it would come down to who's the higher ranked team in the CFP. That's the official tiebreaker for the Sun Belt as far as who would host the game at that point. And so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens there if all these things come to fruition. But again, we'll have to see after all these games play out. 5 o'clock Eastern kick, ESPN Plus, Southern Miss versus UL Monroe. We've got quite a few things to play for in this one. Monroe does not. They are 4-7 and can't possibly make a bowl game even with the win, but they are playing at home, so they're going to want to finish strong. On the other side of the ball, Southern Miss is playing for bowl eligibility, and they've been having their chances here, and they haven't put a game away, and they're on a 3-game losing streak. But if they'd have won any of those games, they'd already have locked up a bowl game. So this is important for them. This is one they think they can have after who they've played close in those last 3 games. They're going to think and look at this and say that they can certainly beat Monroe. But it is not going to be easy with them being on the road and their offense being a little bit inconsistent. Defensively, I think they'll be okay. They're a 3-point favorite at the moment. And the interesting part here is Monroe's offense on the other side has been putting up some points and actually even beating some people they shouldn't have. And they're currently third in the conference, sitting one spot above Southern Miss. So it's actually maybe a little bit closer of a game than some people would think. I'm going to keep it as a close game at this point, mainly because it's in Monroe on the road and their last game of the season. So they don't have much to play for going forward, but they're going to put everything into this one to try and win it. But I think Southern Miss is the more talented team overall and has the better defense, which is probably the most important factor in this one. I'm going to favor the Nasty Bunch and Southern Miss 28-20 in that one. Another 5 o'clock Eastern kick on ESPN Plus has Louisiana going up against Texas State. Louisiana, another of the teams battling for a bowl position. They are 5-6 currently on the year, but this one is being played down in Texas State, which is interesting. Texas State 4-1 at home. Louisiana a measly 1-4 on the road, which means this one could play out to be a little bit closer than expected and definitely gives Texas State a great chance at a victory. The line favors Louisiana and the Cajuns at 5 points right now. So they do think that there's a good chance this one stays close. I also think there's a good chance this one stays close. I think Texas State has a possibility to win it, but again, you've got to think Louisiana with where they've been and where they want to be. They really want to get back to the bowl and extend their season because obviously they're not playing for any championship in the conference this year, but they're going to want to get back to a bowl game, finish strong going into next season. I got to favor them. I got to think that they come away with the victory. Not that it'll be easy, but I do have it being a little bit more in the favor of the Cajuns at this point and covering the spread barely. I have them taking this one 27-20 against Texas State. And we'll round out the game of the week, the game that's labeled Deeper Than Hate, that puts Georgia Southern up against Appalachian State. App State, if you look at it, already has 6 wins, but they had to play 2 FCS teams because Marshall became a conference member, so they had to grab another one. So only one of those wins counts towards bowl eligibility. They need this one to get to a bowl game. But on the other side of that, Georgia Southern has 5 wins to make them almost bowl eligible as well. So either team winning puts one into a bowl game, leaves the other at home. No conference championship aspirations here. So it all comes down to how much these guys want it on the field. These two teams hate each other. These fan bases hate each other even more. So this one should be a great one down there in Statesboro, Georgia. The line currently favors App by 4.5 points. I think this one's even closer than that. It's always close. For those that have been following the conference, App State's been ranked a few times in these types of matchups, and Georgia Southern's come away with the victory down there and in Boone as well. But if you break down this rivalry even further at all-time standings, App State has won 20, Georgia Southern has won 15, and there's been one tie overall. If you look at it, it seems like App State, the last couple iterations over the past about roughly 10 years, has won in groups of 3 games, and Georgia Southern, wins 1, and then App State wins 3. Georgia Southern wins 1, App State wins 3. At this point in time, App State has won the last 2. They win this one, it could make it 3. Bigger than that, no one cares about that as far as the teams go, but it's just an interesting aspect of this matchup and maybe just something to push somebody over the edge because this game is absolutely a coin toss game. To me, there's not a huge, heavy favorite in this, but if you look at the statistics, they're going to favor Georgia Southern. They put up more passing yards, more rushing yards this year, and more receiving yards. So they've got the better offense going in. App State's defense is not what it has been lately. Georgia Southern, probably dropped a game or two here towards the end that they really thought they could have or should have had. So this one's going to be a really good nightcap for the conference because no matter what, someone's extending their season here and someone's season is ending. So it's all on the line in this rivalry. It's going to be my game of the week for that reason alone. Again, just to go over everything else, Coastal Carolina wins at James Madison. In my opinion, there's nothing that would have Troy or South Alabama jump them. Doesn't matter if Troy and South Alabama win by 40 points. There's not going to be enough. James Madison is the best team out of the 3 matchups, so Troy and South Alabama have lesser opponents. They're not going to get a lot of points for beating those teams in the CFP, whereas Coastal would receive some respect and admiration because of what they're playing without, which is their starting quarterback. So Coastal wins against James Madison. They will be the home team, the representative in the conference title game. It really comes down to that west side. I don't see Troy or South Alabama losing this weekend, and Troy's already beaten South Alabama. They would represent the West as the representative with the tiebreaker, and so we'll have a really interesting matchup in Myrtle Beach. If you want my opinion, we're going to have it in Myrtle Beach. Conway, technically, South Carolina should make for some good atmosphere, great weather, hopefully, and a quality matchup if both teams also remain ranked in the college football playoff rankings. We'll see how many of them jump in or jump out, but I think that's what it's going to come down to, the tiebreak between that, and enjoy Week 13. We'll see how this wraps up, and we'll look forward to giving you all the coverage we can going into championship weekend, as well as anybody who does qualify for a bowl. So thanks for listening. Please check us out on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We even got a Patreon page going. So if you like what I'm doing, please support me, and we'll try and get out and provide as much coverage as we can to as many different events as we can going forward. I'd love to get to that championship game if it happens to be down there in South Carolina. It's a pretty easy drive for me. So we'll see if that can happen. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.